Hi again. We're in chapter 21 now of 30 Years a Watchtower Slave, William Schnell. This chapter is entitled Coming Out of the Labyrinth of Watchtower Slavery. First, he talks about his prayer for delivery. The fact that I have come out of abject Watchtower slavery to freedom, and am today able to tell you about it, is a miracle. It is sure evidence of the grace of God. Inasmuch as I was deeply enslaved for 30 years and then escaped from this prison house, which I myself helped build, certainly argues that nothing is impossible with God. It testifies to the thousands now enslaved by the Watchtower Society that they too can find a way out. In fact, it points the way. I had known in a long time already that the Lord expected of me devotion to Him rather than slavery to a human organization. But I am a weak man, and the Society knew this full well. It knew my background, it knew all my weaknesses and all my fears. It had a record of all my mistakes, all the mistakes I had made. They knew how to scare me and how to play on phobias they had engendered in my makeup during the long time they held total sway over me. And I knew that they knew it. If I have the courage to write this book and put it out publicly, knowing full well what it means to my future safety and my ability to make a living, to my possessions and my life, it is solely because I am now under a vow to do so, and God has given me strength and sustaining me. One night, when I was in sore affliction of mind and spirit, I prayed all night long for the Lord to remove the very bad situation in which I found myself. I promised God that if He delivered me, I would do what I could see was His will, expose publicly the slavery I had been in. I can testify that since that night on, I have been freed from the scourge that controlled me for so many years. Thus it is in fulfillment of this vow that I write this book, trusting in the Lord who is always faithful to protect me. This new subhead is Supplementing My Income. When, in December of 1941, my work as zone servant came to an end and I began pioneer work at Campbell, I had to find some way to supplement the income I derived from selling Watchtower books, booklets, and magazines. As zone servant, I had been clothed, fed, and housed by the zone. Since I had extensive acquaintance with Bibles and books, I decided to go into the book business for myself rather than sell only Watchtower Society-issued books. So I established the W.J. Schnell Corporation. Knowing from experience the appalling lack of knowledge among Jehovah's Witnesses, I felt that I could furnish them with books which would broaden their outlook. This way, I could make an honorable living at the same time that I rendered a much-needed service. By splitting my profits with Jehovah's Witnesses, I helped them secure the various versions of the Bible much cheaper than they could have gotten them elsewhere. In fact, the Society itself carried many of these same versions and books in its price lists, and of course charged the full price, or all that the market could bear. I was able to handle this book business from my home by mail, and from 1941 to 1943 I did but a small business. Then I received a letter from the service department of the Society directing me to desist from selling these books, since they might interfere with theocratic knowledge. What they meant, and what they should have said, was that they wanted to have to themselves the whole field to make money on these books, and they wanted to have complete control over what books Jehovah's Witnesses bought and read. Of course, I rejected their order to terminate my private book sales. You may be sure that in this way I did not endear myself to the powers that be. But when I pointed out to them that I used this business to earn money to defray my expenses as a pioneer, they had no answer. Then he has a subhead, Life Can Be Miserable. During these years, I really had hard sledding in Youngstown. Every step I took was watched. People came to my office ostensibly to buy books, but they never bought. Actually, they just came to spy on me, and I knew it. Life was pretty miserable. With malicious intent to destroy and break up my business, they spread, among other gossip and vilification, the rumor that I was using my Watchtower connections to make myself rich. At Campbell, things were virtually at a standstill. I was just barely able to keep a company going there, that is, a congregation. Things dragged along like this until 1949, when I finally got tired of it all. tired of the constant surveillance, and worn down by persistent opposition and ill will. So I left the special pioneer service to which I had been assigned. This meant either that I would have to be transferred to some other spot, or I would have to stay and function as an ordinary pioneer. Ironically, while first I wanted to leave here and they would not allow me to do so, they now wanted me to leave, and I did not want to. No doubt the reason for their change of mind was the fact that I had succeeded in establishing my independence. Well, it was also the reason I had changed my mind. In 1946, I hit upon the idea of publishing an interesting, informative sheet, which I called Book News. It featured different Bible versions and books, describing them and explaining their value. This book news was sent out from time to time using different colored mimeograph paper alternately. This news sheet soon caught on, and my mailing list skyrocketed to about 3,000 names, almost all of them Jehovah's Witnesses. My book business, handled by mail right here from my home, flourished beyond expectations. I next instituted a system of sending on approval 2 books a year to every regular recipient of the free book news, and thus got my business total to grow. In the meanwhile, 1949 had come to an end, and with it, the Campbell Company. That is, the Campbell congregation. I stayed to serve as pioneer. By this time, my mind was beginning to awaken from the hypnosis of Watchtower Corriabantism. I had been reading a lot of material throughout the years from 1941 on. In particular, I had been reading the Bible by itself, without Watchtower Society helps. By God's grace, the Holy Spirit entered my being and began to work powerfully upon me. Spiritual strength returned. I became more outspoken for truth, other than that published in the Watchtower magazine, although I did not yet oppose the Watchtower. My change of mind and attitude was no doubt noticeable in my book news, and by 1951 there were repercussions. He tells us about those repercussions next time. I'll put in a link to a video I did way back at the beginning of our channel, how I left the Watchtower and landed softly, in contrast to Vivian, who crashed. And books were the reason I landed softly. I landed because I was reading good Christian books, apparently like Schnell was doing during this period from 41 onward, reading books outside the Watchtower orbit and realizing there is life, not only life, but light outside of the Watchtower. So how I left the Watchtower and landed softly, books that helped me to wake up, and they were almost all written, by the way, by dead Christians. See you next time.